Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about part 1 of 1984. This is a series of videos that I'll be making about 1984. This is part 1 of the book. This book is split into 3 parts and this is part 1, the discussion. So in part 1 we are introduced to the society of 1984. It's very dystopian, there's lots of surveillance going on. You basically can't escape from government surveillance if you're a worker in this society. It's a very oppressive society as well. It's run by Big Brother. Basically you can't really do anything that you enjoy. You can't have any hobbies, you can't write. If you write then you're pretty much exterminated. But they call that vaporized in this book, vaporization. Another thing is that individuals are fed consistent lies all the time through Big Brother. So Big Brother is basically like the supreme, the government, that kind of thing. It's quite terrifying. It's quite terrifying. I feel like the way our country is going here in England, maybe this could be a possibility one day. Scary. So not much happens plot-wise in part 1. A little emphasis on not much because there are a few things that do happen. But most of all, we're introduced to Big Brother and the society in part 1. We're introduced to the characters. Our main protagonist is Winston. Winston works at one of the ministries of the government. He works in the Ministry of Truth. It's Winston's job to change history, basically. So he'll be given newspaper clippings by Big Brother and say, can you change this please? So one example is that Big Brother associated themselves with a smoking company. And then for some reason the smoking company just died and it was Winston's job to kind of alter that news article. So he made up a completely new person who Big Brother really supported, and basically this person had died in battle. It's just a bit wrong, isn't it? He was just altering all the past, and you have to question, okay, well, what is the truth? And that's a big theme in this book. So Winston himself, he's quite an intelligent fellow. He's quite annoyed by the stupidity of everyone around him. He's like, how can you swallow these lies from Big Brother? So basically he doesn't support the regime whatsoever. That's evident from the very first chapter of this book. He hates it. He hates the oppression. It seems like a lot of people in this book are incredibly lonely as well, like Winston. He doesn't have a family, he doesn't have a wife. Well, he does have a wife, I'll move on to that later. But it's just a very solitary life that the workers of 1984 have to live through. So I said that nothing really happens in the plot, and that's true. We just see Winston in his daily life, basically. And there are 2 big things that happen in the plot. And I know I said nothing much happens, but that's true, apart from these 2 things. So the first one is that Winston starts writing in a diary. And like I said earlier, you're not allowed to write anything. Doesn't matter what it is, you're not allowed to do it unless, well, in his work, he's allowed to write. That's it. He's writing. It's sort of illegal, even though there aren't any laws in this society. And he writes in capital letters all over his diary, down with Big Brother. That's quite problematic. That's quite problematic. That's in the first chapter already, so he's already committed what they call a thought crime, basically rebelling against Big Brother. The second main plot thing that happens in this book is in the last chapter, where Winston goes for a walk. Now, you might think that sounds really boring if you haven't read this book, but it's very important. So he goes and walks what they call the proles, the society of the proles. So these are the people who aren't really controlled by Big Brother. There's not really much surveillance going on, at least what we've seen in part 1. So they're kind of, you can compare them kind of to the working class of today's society, today's England, I guess. So it's a bit weird for the workers to be mixing in with the proles, but this is what he does. And then he goes into a pub and he just questions the landlord about the society. And he's like, do you prefer this society or the one before? I'm like, no, Winston, don't do it, don't do it. Because obviously, if Big Brother heard him do that, that's it, he'll be dead. He'll be dead. And he also goes to the shop where he bought his diary. And this, again, is very dodgy because obviously it's illegal to write. If he's caught with this diary, he will be killed. But he goes back there anyway, into this prole shop. And he buys a bit of coral, which, you know, that's okay, I guess. But again, if Big Brother saw that, they'd be questioning where he got it from, why he has it, blah, 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 blah. So he has this bit of coral, and then he goes upstairs to this prole shop, and he sees this bedroom, and it reminds him of the society before, and then he thinks, oh, I could rent this room out, you know. We see that Winston is basically rebelling more and more and more, even though it's kind of secretive at the moment. I don't know if it's going to get less secretive. I'm saying that, but I do know what happens. Basically, he wants to live the society before. He wants to live in this society before this horrible, oppressive regime. There are also two other main characters I like to talk about. The first one is O'Brien. Winston feels like that O'Brien is part of the Brotherhood. That's basically like the rebellion group that, well, people know about, but no one really knows what it is, if it even exists. O'Brien is kind of like Winston's only ally in this book, and when he's writing his diary, he's constantly thinking of writing it to O'Brien. They've had a few interactions, but only through eye contact, which is a bit strange. It's like Winston's always trying to figure out if someone is a good or a bad person, whether they support or they don't support the regime. And Winston strongly believes that O'Brien does not support the regime. So it'll be interesting to see where their relationship goes, whether O'Brien comes up to him and says, join the Brotherhood, if he knows, who knows, or what's going to happen. It will be interesting. And the second character I like to talk about is the dark-haired girl. And, well, it's kind of like the complete opposite with O'Brien, in that Winston doesn't trust her at all. For example, when he was walking in the society with all the proles in, she was there, which is a bit weird. That's a bit weird. Why is she there as well? So basically he thinks she's a spy. And again, it'll be interesting to see in part 2 where their relationship goes, whether she is a spy or whether she just fancies him. We shall see. Winston also believes that change lies with the proles, with the working class, even though it's not technically working class because they don't really work or do anything. But he also gets angry because he thinks they're too stupid to know that they're being oppressed. And I think there's some parallels with that with today's society. That's all I'm going to say on that topic. So one thing I want to talk about is war. Yes, we're going on to themes now. So when Winston is going for a walk in the town of the proles, a bomb drops. Okay, that's pretty terrifying. I mean, if I was living in London and a bomb dropped, I'd be absolutely terrified. But a bomb drops and then Winston just carries on with his walk, and like nothing had happened. And that makes me think how absolutely horrific this society is if you're in constant war, so much so that it's the norm and violence is the norm. It's terrifying, and I do not want to live in that society whatsoever. I don't think anyone does, do they? If you do, you're a bit weird. Oceania is also in constant war with Eurasia and East Asia as well. And it's just persistent, It's like they want to be in war with someone so that they can say, look at all these victories that we have. And that is what happens, Big Brother's like, we have victory on this front, victory on this front. It's just propaganda to keep the people supporting Big Brother, basically. The second thing I want to talk about is language. This is a massive, massive theme in this book. It's so important. Big Brother use it for manipulation, for control of the people, like what I was saying about war. The people of Airstrip 1 in England are trying really hard to control their language so that they don't get caught by Big Brother. So there's this big tug of control with the language. Also with Newspeak. Newspeak is basically a simplification of the English language. Sim, who works with Winston, is trying to create a Newspeak dictionary. Well, he's doing quite well with it seems. But it's interesting because Sim's saying, look how beautiful Newspeak is. And then Winston is thinking, it's not. The English language is beautiful, you idiot. And, you know, you have to agree with him in that the simplification of language is, well, I didn't realise before reading this actually, is quite terrifying. As Sim says himself, let me get the quotes up. There will be no thought, ... Orthodoxy is unconsciousness. So by simplifying the language, you basically get more people to support the regime because they can't express their feelings against the regime. They're just basically, the language is supporting the regime. It's also interesting how there are lots of opposites in terms of language in this book as well. For example, Winston works in the Ministry of Truth, but really it's the Ministry of Lies because, like I said, with the histories, with the newspapers, he's altering the truth into lies. The Ministry of Peace as well concerns war, so again, don't really need to explain that one. The ministry of love, which Winston says is the most terrifying, concerns itself with order and law. But again, like I said, this society doesn't have any laws, and when you break the laws, even though there are no laws, you are killed, you are vaporised, you are taken away. So that's not love at all, that's hate. And again, the ministry of plenty concerns itself with rations, and in this book the rations are very small, and the rations are always being shortened, for example with razor blades and chocolate. So it's not plenty, it's few. Again, we always get these slogans throughout the book as well. I can't remember what it is now. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. Again, it's just a way for Big Brother to try and convince people that this regime is a good regime when it's not. It's terrible. There are other things I want to talk about with the language, but I want to save it for parts 2 and 3. Don't want to just talk about all the themes that I find interesting in part 1, otherwise the other parts will be small. The last thing I want to talk about is colour. Colour. Orwell uses colour really interestingly in this book, so you don't really get many colours, and Winston notes how you don't really get the variety of colours that you used to get pre-Big Brother. So the main colours you get is black, grey, white. For example, the Ministry of Truth is a white building. Reds and pinks, that usually refers to people, like blood, for example. And also, Winston's diary has a bit of red on it as well. And blue, because the workers wear blue. Can you imagine what life would be like without all of our colours, with just grey and black and white and blue and red? It's so boring and monotonous. But that's not the only thing I think Orwell was alluding to. It's that if you have this oppressive regime, it's like you see everything in greys and whites and blacks because you're just so miserable with this regime. You're so sad from this society. So yeah, that's what I picked up from part 1 of 1984. Again, it's not really that long a video. Well, I don't know how long this will be, but it will be under 20 minutes because that's how long my camera films for. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you enjoyed part 1, what else you thought was interesting in this book. Thank you so much for watching. The next video, part 2, will be this time next month in November. I hope you can join me for that, and thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Ooh.